Hello, my name is Josh. I am a food stylist here at Taste of Home, and I'm glad you're joining me because I'm about to demonstrate how to make an amazing restaurant quality prime rib in the comfort of your own home. Now, if I'm being completely honest, I will admit that in the past, the idea of cooking prime rib was intimidating. However, I've learned that all you need to produce a beautiful, juicy, and delicious prime rib are proper cooking techniques, and those techniques are what I'm about to show you. So, without further ado, let's move on and discuss the prime rib itself. As the name implies, prime rib comes from the rib section of the cow, and it's prized for its marbling of fat and incredible flavor. I've chosen a 4-pound cut of prime rib with the bone in. And now the reason I've chosen to leave the bone in is the bone will help to regulate the cooking temperature of the beef as it cooks. The only trick is that when it comes to slicing and serving the beef, you'll have to work around the bone. But I have asked my butcher to cut the bone away from the beef, and I've bypassed that issue so that when I go to serve it, I simply lift the meat off the bone after I've cut the baker's twine. So if you take a closer look at the beef itself, you can see that there's a separation between the bone on the bottom and the meat on top, and that it is securely tied with this kitchen twine. When you're cooking a large piece of meat like this, it's a great idea to pull it out of the fridge and let it sit for 30 minutes to an hour just to take the chill off the meat, and that helps the cooking process along once we get this into the oven. A lot of times when I think roasting meat, I will picture a large traditional roasting pan like this. However, there's quite a little bit of surface area here, and if we compare the pan to the prime rib, you'll see that the prime rib is quite a bit smaller. And if I use a large pan like this, I run the risk of losing all the delicious juices that will come off this beef as it cooks. It can simply evaporate or scorch on the bottom of the pan, and I want to do everything I can to save those delicious juices because I'm going to use them a little bit later. So rather than using a large roasting pan like this, I'm going to opt to use a sturdy metal 13x9 baking pan like this here. And I rather like this idea because it's a common household kitchen item, so there's no need to go out and purchase a roasting pan for this prime rib. You can also see that the 13x9 baking pan is less deep than the roasting pan, and this is a good thing because that's going to allow for a better browning all the way around on the outside of my prime rib. Many times when you purchase a roasting pan, it will come with a roasting rack like this one here. Instead of using a roasting rack, I'm going to use a bed of vegetables called mirepoix to rest my prime rib on. Mirepoix is a French cooking term that just refers to aromatic vegetables that have been cut and are used as a flavor base for things like sauces, soups, and stews, as well as many other recipes. So most commonly, a mirepoix is composed of carrots, celery, and onions, and that's what I have here, just a rough chop of each. I've added them to my pan, and a personal preference of mine is to add a little bit of olive oil and to coat all these vegetables just to keep them from drying out as they cook in the oven. So now that I have my nice bed of mirepoix prepared and ready in the pan, all that's left to do is to place my prime rib and nestle it in my mirepoix and make sure it's stable. And then one thing that I like to do is to add a little bit of beef broth to the pan. This again just helps to ensure that I have a nice healthy amount of pan drippings to work with after my roast is out of the oven. The next thing I'm going to do for my prime rib is I'm going to create an herb rub for the outside. This is going to impart incredible flavor to the prime rib. So I'm going to use some fresh herbs today. I have 3 tablespoons of rosemary and 2 tablespoons each of oregano, thyme, and sage. In addition to my fresh herbs, I have 1 large shallot that I've roughly chopped, and I have 6 garlic cloves that I've quartered. And that might sound like a lot, but remember this is a big piece of meat and we want to make sure it's really well flavored. So I've got my garlic and my shallot in there, and next all of my fresh herbs. So there goes the sage, there's some rosemary, some oregano, and thyme. And then I'm just going to pulse this until it's nicely chopped. Now that everything is nicely chopped, I'm going to add 2 to 3 tablespoons of olive oil, and that's just going to turn it into a nice paste and make sure it adheres to the prime rib. And I have 3 teaspoons of ground pepper, 1 to 2 teaspoons of salt. I'm just going to mix this one more time, and it's time to adhere it to the prime rib. So I'm just going to apply it to the exterior of my prime rib here, and I'm going to do my best to cover as much of that surface area as possible. This herb rub is not only going to season the meat, but it's also going to season the pan drippings that I keep talking about. And it's just going to add all around incredible, incredible flavor. The last thing I'm going to do before I place my prime rib into the oven is insert a probe thermometer into the middle of the meat itself. I really enjoy using a probe thermometer. It takes all of the guesswork out of knowing where your meat is along the cooking process. Now I'm going to pull the prime rib from the oven about 10 degrees cooler than I want my final cooking temperature to be. The purpose for this is that as the meat sits on the counter, the internal temperature is going to continue to rise, and I don't want to overcook my beef. The proper cooking temperatures for beef are 135 for rare, 140 for medium, and 145 for medium well. I am a sucker for somewhere between rare and medium rare, so I'm going to set my thermometer for 130 and pull it from the oven and let it come up to temperature as it rests. While my prime rib roasts away in the oven, I'm going to prepare a horseradish sauce. This is a classic pairing that is frequently served with prime rib in restaurants, and it's very easy. What I have here is unsweetened heavy cream that I've whipped, and to that I'm going to add about a 1/4 cup of horseradish. Now I'm using prepared horseradish sauce today, but you can use grated as well. And to that I'm also going to add some Dijon mustard, as well as a little bit of salt for some flavor. And I'm just going to stir that together gently until it's incorporated. Now I'm going to customize this to some of my personal preferences, and I'm going to add a little bit of acidity with some lemon juice and a little bit of tarragon vinegar. I love the flavor from tarragon vinegar. And I like some pepper, so I'm going to add mine in there. And then, again, those are just some personal choices of mine that I like to enhance the flavor of the horseradish sauce. Now that I have all of my ingredients nicely incorporated, I'm just going to chill this until I'm ready to serve my prime rib. My prime rib is hot out of the oven, and boy, I wish you could smell all the fresh herbs and the garlic in there. So the next step is for me to take the prime rib out of the pan and transfer it to my cutting board. And I'm going to cover it and let this rest. So while my prime rib rests, it's going to come up to the proper internal temperature. It's also going to allow the meat to reabsorb the juices. So while my prime rib rests, I'm going to return my focus to my pan here and look at all those delicious pan drippings that are in the bottom. Those pan drippings are packed full of flavor from the beef, from the herb roast, as well as the mirepoix vegetables. So what I'm going to do is just strain all those juices through a fine mesh sieve and capture all those vegetables. So I'm going to use a spatula and kind of gently press my vegetables and get all of that delicious juice. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to focus on what's in my bowl here. This is concentrated flavor, and it's going to be absolutely delicious when served with the beef. And I'm just going to add some warmed beef stock and stretch this out a bit more. This is called au jus, which is a French term that simply means with juice. Au jus is typically not thickened with flour or cornstarch like a gravy. It's simply served as is. This is going to be delicious when served with the prime rib. The prime rib has been resting for about 15 minutes. You can let it rest for up to 30 minutes, and the internal temperature has come up to what I want it to be. And now it's time to slice. But first, I'm going to remove that twine that holds the bone to the meat. I'm just going to remove that out of my way. I can simply lift the meat off the bone, and now I'm ready to slice. Now is the big reveal where I get to slice the prime rib. Look at my delicious prime rib. It's perfectly cooked. After resting, all of those juices have been reabsorbed by the meat. You can see the beautiful marbling that goes through and through. This is going to be absolutely delicious. And now you've seen all the steps for making the perfect restaurant quality prime rib at home. I like to serve my prime rib with comforting mashed potatoes, savory roasted vegetables, the au jus, and of course the horseradish sauce. Thanks for watching.